All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Questionable Calls podcast. Clark, it's Thanksgiving, man. When we separate, who's who, who's for real, who's not for real, and all of that nonsense. I've been saying that about, the NFL for a while. Like, let's get to Thanksgiving and let's see where we're at. So I just had some questions about some of the stuff we saw today. I mean, God, that Cowboys Commanders game was out of this world. 41
Yeah,
points, 41 points scored in the fourth quarter combined. Uh, I
that
was
was
just
one
like,
of those games when I was picking it. I was like, do I have the guts to pick the Cowboys here? Yeah, yeah, and then I didn't. I took the Commanders, and they kind of blew it, but
yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah,
actually, no, they did. I mean, the guy missed the extra point.
yeah.
I mean,
The well, the Cowboys tried to blow it. It's like they should have had it in hand, and I don't know what the hell happened. And then the Commanders, got a miracle, but they couldn't cash it in. So it's kind of but yeah. So all right, first, Clark. Dolphins win. They beat the Patriots relatively easily.
like we thought. I mean,
Especially for them. And so, Clark, I mean, are we flipped now? Do we want the Dolphins? Do we just go ahead and root for the Dolphins to win now at this point? Because we kind of, 5-6 now. We've pretty much locked ourselves out of. There's no way they're going to get a high draft pick now, especially with you can see some teams are packing it in when the Giants are cutting Daniel Jones and stuff like that. You can see some of these teams have no chance.
I
And
mean, hey, do you want the Dolphins to get him once he clears waivers? I mean, you want Danny Dimes? I mean,
I'm not against it. I'm not against it. Not against it.
Well,
But
he's tall and he can run. I mean, so
yeah, and he's got a pretty good arm, pretty strong arm. I'm not against it, but do I think that Daniel Jones is better than Tua? No, I'm not at that. I'm not at that level. Whatever crap I've said about Tua, like
yeah,
he's better than Daniel Jones. They looked. I mean, look, the Patriots are bad, so it's hard to judge.
yes,
It's really hard to judge that game. But again, I like how the Dolphins are playing. I didn't like that they threw the ball 40 times. I thought that was a bit much. And all of a sudden, Jalen Waddle makes an appearance. I thought Jalen Waddle had exited the chat, and apparently he's a real player. Like, oh wow, boy, maybe we should throw him the ball a little bit more. You know, but it's those like they were explaining. I think Adam Archuleta did a good job on the broadcast explaining like teams have just been taking that away, so that's why Tua has been checking the ball down. He's like, but if you don't take that away and the Patriots didn't, well, then he'll just throw to it every time.
yeah, um, yeah. I mean, like we thought. Now again, people are going to get all excited now, and on Thursday night they're going to Green Bay to as Chris Berman used to say, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. And the Dolphins in cold weather, especially with Tua, are not good.
Right.
And also the Packers are, what are they, 8-3?
I
I
think
think
so.
so because they won today. Yeah, they're 8-3. So they're a real team. They can run the ball. Jordan Love can make plays, and as I just said, the Dolphins are bad in cold weather. So in order for them to make the playoffs, they're going to have to beat one of these good teams. Don't they play the Browns?
Yeah, they do. The
Okay.
second
First
to
of
last
all,
game of the
I
season.
think a lot of people were penciling that in as a win. Um, Look, the Browns roster is not terrible. They've got some players on there. And also, Jameis Winston is competent at quarterback, and he can make a few plays here and there. That's all you need to be like a 500 team. I mean, if Jameis Winston was playing all year, the Browns would probably be like 5-6 or something, or 6-5. Like, I'm not saying they're a great team or anything, so I don't think people are penciling that in as a win. I don't think that's going to be a win. And then the other good teams on their schedule, like, don't get ahead of yourselves, guys.
Yeah. So right now, Green Bay is a 3.5 point favorite on Thursday night. Which sounds about right. I don't think the Packers are unbelievable, but I think that their floor is a little bit higher than the Dolphins' floor is, and especially at home on a Thursday night when you don't have a whole lot of time to kind of you know put the best game plan together. And then, but I mean, Clark, I can't. The thing is, based on the way teams are playing, I can't make an argument. It's hard for me to just make an argument. Well, that's it, they're done. I got to be logical about this. I think they're done because I don't think it matters. I don't think they can beat anybody that's good, and even if they get in, so what? They're going to get smoked by
Yeah.
whoever. But look, at Green Bay, I mean, Green Bay is better than them, but it's not by miles. The Jets at home, the Jets are bad. The Jets are just a bad team. They're playing at Houston, and I hate the schedule stuff, but I'm going to do it anyway. And Houston lost to Tennessee today.
Yeah,
At
Houston's
mid,
not. I think some people thought Houston would be like really, really good. They're clearly not. They're
yeah.
not bad, but they're not.
Right now, they're not playing well. How are they going to be playing in 3 or 4 weeks? I don't know. But right now, they're kind of there. They're not great. And then they got the 49ers at home, and Brock Purdy's out today. So I mean, the 49ers. That's not. We'll talk about the 49ers in a few minutes. But and then at Cleveland, which Cleveland again. It's going to be that probably. I bet you Cleveland's favored by 3.5 or something, and then at the Jets the last game. So
Well,
I can't.
okay. You know what? I, all right. I guess I can't fault people who are going to be positive for being positive because, all right, if we look at that, right, the 49ers clearly are not what they were.
No.
Okay. So when we're looking at that game, we can't think this is like they're playing the 49ers from 2 years ago or something. Like that's
Right.
clearly not the case. So could they win that game? I mean, I don't think it's nuts. Them beating Green Bay in Green Bay, like forget it. And then Cleveland, like I said, I think they're good. I don't think that's like an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. But Houston has been they're not really playing well, like you said. So could the Dolphins finish 9-8? It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not nuts.
Yeah, they only have to go 4-2.
Yeah.
So
So that's actually possible. So yeah, I mean, whatever. Yeah, and if they go to the playoffs, they'll get annihilated. But whatever.
So I mean, yeah, I think that's. I'm back in. I'm not back in like, oh, we're gonna tear this up and we got a chance to do some damage. I'm not back in. I'm not back in like that. But you know what? If we're not gonna be bad, and obviously that's not gonna happen,
Yeah.
based on what's happened. Like they win the last 3 games in a row, and it's like they haven't looked like a bad team in those games. They haven't looked great, but they have not. They're far from bad. So if we're not going to be bad, then for God's sakes, let's go ahead and win. Then screw
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I like, and I've said this for a while now. I like the way that they're trying to play. I like that they're running the ball. I like that the defense is starting to play better. That draft Chop Robinson looks like a pretty good draft pick. I know he was beating up on the Patriots right tackle, who's not good, but he played well in the Rams game. The defensive line looks like, oh wow, we got a defensive line now. So I yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. They're taking some stuff. They've clearly taken stuff off of Tua's plate. Oh, but you know what? So yeah, we'll get off the Dolphins here, but I just wanted to talk about this, Clark. This just blows my mind. And this is something that's just small. It's not a big deal, but my God sakes, for God's sakes, could Tua ever like overthrow a deep ball? Is every single one underthrown? It's like,
He's well in his NFL career. I've seen him overthrow guys a few times, but yeah, by and large, he underthrows pretty much everybody.
he had a ball. I forget, was it I can't remember. There's one down the right sideline where he had, I think it might have been the running back. I can't remember, but it's just like he had him beat, and it's like he could have caught it if he'd have just thrown it far enough. He didn't do it, and then Waddle makes a great catch on a ball down the sideline where he has to stop and come back to it, and it's just he's unbelievable. So I understand that, but it's just like, my God, man, how do you manage this? I've never seen somebody who could just a bit under, like, it's 5 years in the NFL. And has anyone ever adjusted? And then I go and I watch, God, who was it that threw the deep ball? Oh, it was Stroud. And he threw a deep ball in the 1 o'clock game. And it's just like, this high arcing thing. And I'm like, why is he not adjusted to this? So anyway, that's just something that irks me. It doesn't really matter, because it's not that kind of offense. But it's just kind of like I'm just amazed by it.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing was next topic, Clark. All right. Chiefs hate meter. So Chiefs win they have the lead by 2 scores against Carolina. Carolina comes back, ties the game. Chiefs go down, kick a field goal, win the game at the buzzer. Where are we on your Chiefs hate?
Well, I think I dropped it to a 5 after they lost. I'm going to raise it to a 7.
Yeah.
You know? If they if they win the Super Bowl, I'm going to be pretty, I'll be pretty annoyed by that. If they make the Super Bowl, I'm going to be really just like, whatever. Okay, so so about a 7. Now, I just want to point something out, and I think we've done this, but it's just whatever. This is what the Chiefs do. This is how the Chiefs play. Okay, most of their games are going to be close at the end. Okay, now to be honest, many NFL games end up being close in the fourth quarter.
Right.
The Chiefs are not like blowing any. They're not really. If they can't blow away Carolina, they're not really blowing anybody else away.
Right.
Okay. When they played the Saints earlier in the year on Monday Night Football, it was a 3-point game in the fourth quarter before the Chiefs moved
Yep.
away from them. And then they had to beat the Broncos by blocking a field goal. So this is how they play. It's going to be close like the rest of the way. It's going to be nip and tuck, and they're going to have to make plays in critical moments, which they seem to basically always do. I do wonder about their defense to an extent, because you give up 27 points to Carolina.
Right.
That's, and I know I heard somebody point out that they lost one of their corners in the offseason.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of affects things to an extent. And I like, is Bryce Young good? I don't know. Like,
he looked okay in that game.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
it
looked
looked like
decent in that game. It looked like he could actually play.
Yeah, it looked like he it looked like he was making the stuff that was there. He was making the plays that were there. He hung in there in the pocket a few times. He got outside and, made some moves, like, got outside the pocket, moved around a little bit to create some plays. So I think maybe it just took a little while, and we'll see. Does that mean, now, do I think he's going to be awesome now? I don't know. That team's not very good, but we've reached that point in the season, Clark, where getting a win is tough. Everybody's competitive now. It's hard to. I mean, most of the teams. There's still a small handful that's just they're bad every week. Giants and whatever. But
let me just the last thing I'll add about that is just when Nick Wright goes on there and says the Chiefs, well, these are like practices and they're holding back and they're just dude, no, this is how they are. Okay, they're trying. They go out every week. They go out. They try to win, and sometimes it can be a real struggle. Sometimes they have to really move the ball down the field slowly. Which, to be honest, that's kind of happening with a lot of teams because of the way other teams are playing defense. But this is how they play. All the games are going to be close, and we'll see what happens. That's what's going on. It's not they're not screwing around or like they're going to flip a switch later or whatever. Like they didn't flip a switch. They didn't flip a switch last year. I mean, people might be like, "What do you mean they didn't flip a switch?" All right, they didn't flip a switch last year. I know people think that, but I mean, in the playoffs, everything was close. The AFC Championship game was 1 score. The Bills game was 1 score. So the Super Bowl was really close. It went to the end of overtime. So that's how they play. And they win. Still, they win most of their games. So they're not screwing around. That's honestly I mean, I don't really necessarily want to use this word, but it's kind of offensive to go around saying that. It's like, oh yeah, they're so much better than everybody else. No, they're not. If they're so much better than everybody else, why are all these games coming down to the very end? So anyway.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, come on, he's trolling. I mean,
I
that's all
mean,
that's
at a certain point, yeah,
that's
because
all
yeah,
that's going
that's
on there. But I tend, yeah, I agree with you though. I don't think this is, oh, we're saving stuff, we're saving our good plays. You know, I think this is, this is, they have the best quarterback in the league, and when you have the best quarterback in the league, this is what he does for you. He takes you from a game that's in question to you're going to win. This is what happens. But what I will say is, no, I'm still not on board with hating the Chiefs yet. We'll see. Maybe that changes. But what I would say is that what concerns me about the Chiefs that no one's going to talk about, Clark, is their offensive tackles are a problem, and their left tackle's a rookie, and their right tackle, and you can see it in these games. Teams are taking advantage of that. And so that's what's going to happen when we get into the playoffs. And when you play a team like Buffalo, who has guys that can take advantage of your tackles, that's a
or Steelers. I mean, maybe
well, definitely the Steelers. Obviously,
yeah.
when you're playing teams like that, that's an issue. And so if the Chiefs play the Steelers in the playoffs, you know what that game's going to look like. It's going to be 20-17, and it's just going to be them knocking each other out the whole game. So that's what I would say about the Chiefs. Listen, no disrespect though. That team's awesome, and they're going to, they're going to be tough to beat. You got to beat them. You got to do what Buffalo did if you want to beat them. That's what it's going to take. And so it's become like the NBA, Clark, where it's literally you can just turn the Chiefs game on with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you got to go beat them. You're not going to just get handed the game. Your defense isn't going to stop them to win the game. It's just not. That's not where we're at. So anyway, but yeah, all right. So Chiefs hate meter at a 7, you said. All right. So let's see. So we'll see. We'll keep our eye on that. So Clark, we talked about on Thursday night the Steelers. They had a rough game against the Cleveland Browns in a blizzard.
They had the
Which
lead, and then the Cleveland went on a drive where he converted 2 fourth downs. So people like saying,
yeah
"Oh, the Steelers shouldn't have
yeah
lost."
game
I
could have
mean,
gone either way. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay. Game could have gone either way, and they didn't come through. And so I found it funny though the conversation like the next day, Colin Cowherd's like, "What are they doing putting Justin Fields out there? Why don't they keep Russell Wilson?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's what it is. That's the difference. It's that those 4 or 5 plays that Russell Wilson wasn't in there, wasn't the quarterback. That made all the difference. Just so that I think that's the funniest part. The reason that I like the Steelers, Clark, is just because the narrative around them has nothing to do with what's actually going on. They're just well coached. They do things the right way. They don't make a lot of like critical mistakes, except when Russell Wilson throws an interception in the end zone. They mostly play the right way, but they need things to go their way. They're not like awesome and dynamic. And when Jameis Winston looks like he's better than your quarterbacks, that's that's a bit of a problem. But anyway, my real question is, Clark, so are we both in on the Steelers now? I know I'm in.
I mean, it's kind of fun. It's just kind
Yeah.
of like they're greater than the sum of their parts. And it's also the way the NFL is now. It's kind of like they're bucking the trend almost, because it's like they're not, in order to be really, really good, like you're supposed to have a really good quarterback, and they have a
They
decent,
don't have one.
yeah, they have a decent quarterback in Russell Wilson, and then you have Justin Fields, who, he was winning games, but they pulled him out of there because, clearly he's limited.
Well, and I'd also like to point out, Clark, this is my, with people who would have a problem with me criticizing Tua, the Dolphins quarterback. It's not a criticism of Tua. It's a criticism of the team around him and the way it's built. If you put Tua on this Steelers team, let me tell you something. That would be scary. Like,
Yeah, maybe.
he'd have, I mean, dude, a team like this that can run the ball, protects pretty well. Now, obviously, the Lions would be like the best version of all time. That'd be the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever. But, I think, I know, oh, Russell Wilson completes like 2 or 3 deep balls in a game. Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
50% of his passes, for God's sakes. So, that's what I would say. Like, this team is set up perfectly and they're well coached and they do things the right way. If the Dolphins did things like that, this would be a completely different conversation. I think the Dolphins are getting the most out of Tua that they can. So, but it's just the best of that is, it is what it is. Anyway, all right, I'm not going to drag us back into another Dolphins conversation. Clark, are the 49ers done? Because I think they're done.
Done in terms of making the playoffs?
Done in terms of being a contender for anything.
Oh,
I mean, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Maybe they will, but I don't think it matters. This team is not, they're not legit.
So what do you think? I mean, obviously they've had some injuries. Obviously McCaffrey was out for a while. He's back now. And then Purdy was not in the game today. So I don't necessarily want to say they're done being a contender because, I mean,
well, maybe for this season. I guess I shouldn't say
for this season. Yeah.
I
I'll
guess
just
I
say,
don't mean done forever.
Yeah. Even though they're going to pay Brock Purdy, apparently, they still have, if you still have McCaffrey and then you got Juwan Jennings and you got Brandon Ayuk and you got that much talent on offense. And then Shanahan is he's a good play call. Like, I just can't think that they couldn't, turn things around a little bit, next season. But yeah, I think they're going to miss the playoffs because they've shown no ability to string games together. They're 5-6, 5-6,
5-6.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
Yeah.
Right now they're in the 10th. They're in the 10th seed in the NFC right now. They're ahead of Tampa Bay just because they beat Tampa Bay, but they got the Rams and the Cardinals and the Commanders all ahead of them. So yeah, I think I mean, well, let's talk micro view, then we'll go big picture. But I think, yeah, they're just I think they're old, and I think their best players are beat up, and they've been through this over and over and over again. And Clark, this is like, I hate to compare it to the NBA, but when you're in the playoffs or going near the finals every year, it takes a toll on you. It does. Like, it's like a pitcher who just threw 240 innings the last year, and it's like they're kind of, you can't do that every single year. It's just really difficult. So I think they're struggling with that. And also, like, receiver wise, they're trying to figure it out. Ayuk out for the year. It's like, wow, this is tough. So they don't look anywhere near the way that they did. And I don't think they're not getting the same, as far as running the ball, they're just nowhere near what they were. And so yeah, I think that's it. I think Green Bay kind of stepping on them today kind of finished it. Even though I know they didn't have Purdy and all of that, but I just don't think, and this is why when we talk about, a little more big picture here, you got one more year where Purdy's relatively cheap. Because even if they give him a new contract, only it won't count all of it. It won't be a crazy cap hit next season. And I don't think they should pay him this offseason anyway. But this is all the people that we're not saying negative things about Brock Purdy. We're just saying you pay this guy $50 million and it's just not the same anymore. There's just a drop off. Period. He's not carrying you anywhere. Like, you see the best players around him are just not quite as good, and they're an average team now.
Yeah.
So, and we're going through this as Dolphins fans. Like, we get it. So yeah, I think that does in the 49ers, and that's too bad, but I think that I mean, right now, Clark, the Seattle Seahawks are the 3 seed in the NFC. But that speaks to something I will talk about. Let's talk about one more thing. I'm really impressed with the Denver Broncos, Clark. Like, rookie quarterback, and he looks better every week. Like, the guy, he gets the ball to the right place like he's supposed to. Denver plays good defense. Are they an awesome team that they can beat a contender in the playoffs? I have no idea, but this thing is wow. It's amazing. Like you just get a quarterback that can do what Sean Payton wants him to do, and wow,
Yeah.
what a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was watching Russell Wilson in the game against Cleveland, I'm like, yeah, I can see why Sean Payton was totally sick of this guy. Whereas Bo Nix, like, is he unbelievable? No, but he makes a few throws. He can move a little bit. He gets rid of the ball. He's not screwing around holding on to the ball for too long. He's getting rid of it. Um, and they've got 7 wins now, so it's basically like, could they win 10 games?
Why not?
Maybe. I mean, it's only 3 more wins. Like maybe they could pull that off. So
Yeah, I think I'm really impressed. And as far as the rookie quarterbacks go, right now, Bo Nix is playing better than Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams. Right
yeah,
now, he's
Caleb
he's
looked better
outplaying them.
today, but
He did,
yeah,
yeah.
and Jaden, like he made some plays in that game. So I don't want to, I mean, granted, one of those touchdowns was just, he threw it to the guy and he ran all the way
Right.
down the field past everybody. But
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I think that yeah, well, so we haven't talked about this in a little while. Let's talk about the rookie quarterbacks. I think defenses have adjusted to Jaden Daniels now. And I think that they've got to figure out what to do. Now he played much better in the second half, but the first half he was pretty bad. And so I'm interested to see how that goes. Yeah, Caleb Williams was better today, but I mean, Clark, the Bears are such a disaster. Like, how do you? I mean, they're doing stuff like, I mean, Jesus, the Dolphins are not competent about a lot of stuff. The Bears are just they're so incompetent, it's insane. Like they interview 9 guys for their OC position. They hire this guy. They fire him by Thanksgiving. They get rid of him. All of a sudden, they look totally different. Like, what's going on here? They
yeah,
can't execute a Hail Mary defense. I mean, I just I think the Bears are on the right track now. They're making it easier for them, and they're being smart about the way that they're using them, and they're losing these games close. Which okay, I get that, but yeah, the Bears, I'm just really concerned about their whole situation, and with the amount of talent on their team, that's insane to me that they can't do this better. Like, I'm looking at these other teams, like, are you kidding me? Like, Denver would kill to have the Bears offensive personnel.
yeah, yeah. Well, they're the Bears. They don't have any history of doing offense really well, and yeah, I mean, one of the things people need to understand about it, if you were thinking Caleb Williams was going to be unbelievable coming out of college, and I'm not saying he might not be, but look, man, there's only so much a quarterback can do to overcome bad coaching.
Yep.
Peyton Manning, like, he won a lot of regular season games before he won his first playoff game.
Yep.
And he clearly, they had to, once they found Tony Dungy, that kind of stabilized things, and then things were a little bit better. But yeah, he was maybe held back by that. Andrew Luck retired. That's the same organization, but the point still stands. It's basically like, if your organization is not doing good enough, like, it's going to affect everything, and it's going to prevent you from getting, like, Justin Herbert. I think they're going to start to get the most out of him now. And we've
Right.
seen flashes of some things, but, like, he's been held back by bad coaching for years. Joe Burrow is going to be held back by the Bengals organization and their terrible defense, and they're being cheap. There's only so much you can do. So it's like, when your comp for him is Mahomes, it's like, okay, Mahomes has the best organization in the league. He's got the best coach in the league. He's got, one of the best defenses in the league. He's got a really, really good defensive coordinator. He's just got a stable organization. Like, that, like, is a huge freaking deal. And you
Yep.
can't, like, I don't care how good you are, you can't overcome that. And
Yep.
so this is going to be the problem for the Bears. Like, it's, is it going to be a situation where Caleb Williams struggles with the Bears and never really makes good on anything, and then they decide to move on, and then he goes somewhere else, and magically he gets good coaching, and then he's unbelievable? Like, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree. And by the way, what you just said, Clark, is totally evidenced by watch Drake May play. Watch. He's got nothing. Like, it's just, they're totally lost on what to do. And it's just, the guy's getting absolutely destroyed by the Dolphins defense, just constantly hitting him, rushing. They're all over him the whole game. And the dude's still making, like, I give the guy credit, but it's like, that has no chance of working. Like,
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, we'll just fix this here and fix that there. This is not a fixer upper. This is like a freaking, like, I'm amazed at how bad that is. Like, and Bill Simmons have been talking about it ad nauseum, and he's like, oh man, Drake May's awesome. It's like, he'll never be awesome if they don't do the right thing. So yeah, I think that makes a big deal. And I think Bo Nix is getting, probably of those guys, probably the best coaching. And so that's probably a major
Yeah, I
part of
think
what's
Jaden
going on.
Daniels, like, guys figured things out. I think he'll work through that and figure things out.
Yep.
That tends to happen, and I think Cliff Kingsbury's he's decent. So, I think he'll kind of figure that out. But I think Shane Steichen's a really good coach, and Anthony Richardson. I mean, just
Yeah.
unless you want to really sit there and work through this over the next couple of years and have him get more starts and more, like, I see him miss stuff, and I'm just like, that must be a mechanical thing or something like that. I don't know how you're missing some of these throws, given
Yep.
how big you are and how much of an athlete you are. Which again just goes to show, like, when you're evaluating quarterbacks coming out of coming into the NFL, like, don't get so enamored with, oh, he's huge. Are we talking about a defensive tackle or an offensive lineman or a quarterback? Like, again, I'm not saying size doesn't matter. I mean, it does, especially how
You just
tall
got to
you
have
are.
prototypical size. Yeah. It doesn't need to
Yeah,
be ridiculous.
but making all those throws, it's not just about strength. There's a lot of different things that go into it. So
Yeah. And that being said, I love all these quarterbacks. I think they all have a chance to be pretty good if these teams support them correctly. There's nothing against them. I think they all have really good opportunities. All right. So, did you want to talk about the media driven topic this week of Deion Sanders going to coach the Cowboys?
yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've never seen something brought up, Clark, that ESPN would love to have happen more than this. Like, it's literally, they talk about the Cowboys way too much anyway, and the Cowboys suck. So they need a reason to talk about them, and that's literally why this was brought up. Deion has literally told people, he told the media in press conference, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm good. He told Joel Klatt, no, I'm not going anywhere. But it just doesn't stop the train.
Yeah. When Colin Cowherd starts doing his big swings take,
Yeah.
which he's constantly doing that. Hey, you want to be successful, you got to take big swings, which I do find kind of funny because for years he rooted for the New England Patriots, and it's like they basically never took a big swing on just about anything. I mean, so yeah, and also I love his whole thing. Well, you can get out of Dak's contract. Oh, really? You can just trade that? Really? Somebody else wants to pay that? Right. It's like, well, they got out of Russell Wilson. It's like, dude, no. Okay. That's a different, like, stop it. And
Yeah,
also,
different deal. It's not as much
by the
money.
way, Jerry Jones doesn't do that.
Right.
I understand he had to be talking off the ledge about, drafting Johnny Manziel, but beyond that, he doesn't take big swings. He holds on to coaches for way too long. He falls in love with players, and then he's basically like, he keeps paying them when he shouldn't. He paid Ezekiel Elliott when he shouldn't have paid him. CeeDee Lamb and Dak, you could have paid him earlier. You might have saved yourself some money. But no, you drag it out to the end, and then you pay him anyway. And then it's like, oh, well, they're going to fire McCarthy because they haven't given him a new deal. They'll probably give him another one in the offseason. Like, Jerry Jones will just go, well, Dak got hurt, so, we'll be fine next year. They came into the season thinking they were a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
And they're clearly not. And it's like, well, Dak Prescott got hurt. No. Okay. You got one receiver. Your running backs suck. Like, your defense, you were a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a bunch of nonsense. I don't know who's purporting this, you know, blatant BS, and I think it's insane. I don't believe for a second the Cowboys and the Bears are going to fire their coach. I don't care how many people tell me, well, they've got to fire the coach. I don't care how many people tell me that. I've been watching these organizations my whole life. They don't act like that.
If I was to compare the two organizations, who's more likely to get fired?
Yeah, that's tough.
That's tough. I guess I would say the Bears, but yeah, I don't know. That's kind of tough because you're right. They kept Matt Nagy, and it was kind of weird. Like, why did they do this? So yeah, that's a good. Yeah,
Everybody
that's a good
wanted
point.
Nagy fired. They kept him for an extra. This is the crazy part about the Bears. They wanted Nagy fired, or everybody else wanted Nagy fired. They kept him. Then they let him draft Justin Fields. They kept him for the next year and then fired him. What are you doing? Like, they either should have, and they should have done this either way, Clark. Before this season, they should have either said, "All right, given Eberflus an extension, right," or fired him. But they didn't do either one. They're like, well, we'll kind of play the middle. It's just like these teams don't want to. They don't want to pay. I mean, they don't want to pay coaches. That's part of it. It's also just because they're incompetent. But yeah, no. And Jerry Jones keeps people forever. Like he had Jason Garrett for 8 freaking years. All the Cowboy fans wanted him fired like immediately. The first year, it was a story every single year, and I think it's one of these things like you could say he's diabolical. He just lets it be out there, have his coach not have an extension, so people will talk about the Cowboys more.
Yeah.
So, all right. So before we move on to college football, Clark, I just wanted to say, so who are we saying, Clark, at this point in the season? You know, I always do my not going to the Super Bowl list at the beginning of the season. Who are we saying, okay, these teams have a shot? I'm keeping them in as like our Super Bowl bubble. Or these teams have, I mean, honestly, Clark, I think it's, the Chiefs. I guess I'm going to have to eat it on Buffalo. I took a dump on them before the season started. And I guess I'm going to have to just,
Yeah, Chiefs, the Bills. I'm taking the Ravens out of it. Their defense
yeah,
is really a problem.
yeah.
And look, as much as I like Lamar, he's really played poorly in the playoffs, and I don't see any reason why that wouldn't continue. So, to be honest, I mean, I guess it's really just the Chiefs and the Bills. If you wanted to, you could put Pittsburgh there, I guess. I
I wouldn't.
guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't put Pittsburgh there. I put the Chargers there before I put Pittsburgh there. But I mean,
Yeah,
then.
that's
But
a
what do
good
we?
point. Yeah.
But what about Houston? Are we just? I mean, I
Maybe they turn things around, but if I'm really forced to really put, yeah, I'm just gonna. And honestly, especially after tomorrow night when the Ravens play the Chargers, assuming the Chargers win the game,
right.
then I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to say Chiefs, Bills, and then I'm going to say, and I'll put the Chargers there, although I'm a little, because I think the Chargers, they need more talent on offense, but
Yeah,
they clearly have an identity and whatever, because of Harbaugh. So, all right, that's, in some ways, that's almost easier. What the hell are we doing in the NFC? We have the Lions, and then,
I think it's Lions, Eagles, and that's it.
yeah,
And Eagles just because they've kind of figured out what they are. Like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And last year the major problem was the Eagles' defense, and their defense is good now. Like it's been playing well, and they've got studs all over the field now. I mean, not that the Eagles' talent was a problem before, but Clark, it's like they drafted the two corners, and they're unbelievable. So they got the two Georgia defensive tackles, which are just they're awesome, right? They got I mean, they're just so freaking talented. It's insane. And Saquon has turned their offense into, so I just think, I think it's Detroit, Philly, and then, I mean, what are we talking about? Atlanta's not beating anyone in the playoffs. I'd like them to win 10 games, but they're not beating anybody. And then what are
Green
we
Bay,
doing?
Minnesota.
Right. And then
Yeah,
it's like
Minnesota, we kind of feel like, all right, they've kind of got a ceiling. Like they're a solid team, and I
right.
think they're going to make the playoffs at this point because they only have 2 losses. But yeah, the Packers, they're good, but I feel like we've been waiting for something from them, and we haven't really seen it.
Yep.
And then I'm trying to think of anybody else. I mean, the Commanders, if they make the playoffs, like no, we're not really buying it. They need a lot more help. other than Jaden Daniels. Okay, who else?
Well, so
NFC. Go ahead.
yeah, so I mean, yeah. NFC South, we're not taking anybody from there. I mean, we
Yeah,
just talked
no.
about the NFC North.
Seattle looks. I like Seattle, but
Yeah, we're not taking anybody from the West either. So I think if I just said this, Clark, if I go, all right, Super Bowl bubble, Chiefs, Bills, Eagles, Lions, and then you put two teams on the outside, Packers, and then
Chargers,
Chargers maybe or Houston. I don't know.
Steelers.
Right. Like
I
that's
could put this. I could put the Steel. Yeah, I'd put on the AFC side. I'd put the Steelers and the Chargers, and
yep.
then if I wanted to, if you want to put the Texans there, okay. I'm not really
Right.
feeling
But
it with
there's
that.
four teams we're pretty confident in.
Yeah,
Everybody else is like
everybody else were like, maybe they could go on a run or something. But it's
So
kind of
yeah, so this is my point, Clark. But the reason I do this exercise is because the media tries to tell you the NFL's wide open. Not even close. College football is more wide open than the NFL is right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, so let's move on from that. All right, so college football I'm just going to give I just have some takeaways, Clark, that I wrote down just because on the heels of me blasting the SEC like I did last week, because I got tired of the SEC media machine acting like a bunch of lunatics and just not being completely unreasonable and insane. That I think that so yeah, it was like, oh well, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? Indiana doesn't deserve it. Indiana's ranked 5th. This is ridiculous. Last week, like, oh, the Indiana would lose 4 games in the SEC. This is whatever. And then this weekend happened, Clark. Oklahoma beats the shit out of Alabama. Okay, Ole Miss gets beat by Florida. Texas A&M loses to Auburn. Right, like I don't. You have literally, you didn't have much of a leg to stand on last week, SEC. You have nothing. Like, I don't want to hear any of your nonsense about we deserve this and we deserve that. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear about your schedules. Like, I don't want to hear it. Okay, your strength of schedule is better. Great. You got to win the games, though. Like, your strength of schedule means nothing if you don't win the games. So, I've just had it with this, strength of schedule matters. Like, it is a tool to be used. It is not a deciding, like, the end all be all of, oh, this is what you got to be. Greg Sankey puts out a tweet, basically puts like the top 10 strength of schedules. They're all SEC teams. Yeah. So freaking what? Okay.
Yeah.
I've watched your teams play. Like, I'm supposed to believe Alabama's really good. Seriously?
Yeah.
You lost to Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
3 losses. You lost to Vanderbilt. You got physically dominated by Tennessee. Tennessee didn't even play that well, and they beat you. And then you go to Oklahoma and get destroyed. Okay? Oklahoma is not – they're a 5-5 team. Like, they're an average team. They can't really score that many points. And you had no chance in that game. Jalen Milroe had like 15 rushing yards. Like, so I don't want to hear it from you, SEC. I'm done with the whole thing. So, now you can rank the teams however you want, and we can talk about all that. But yeah, I just like, to me, this like ends the conversation about, oh, we're going to get 4 or 5 teams in. No, you're not. You're not even close. So stop, quit the nonsense. Yes. Do I think the SEC is the best conference? Yeah, I do. But that doesn't mean you get to just do whatever you want. It doesn't mean you just get all the benefits of the doubt and it doesn't matter what you do. No, it does matter. It does matter what you do. So yeah, it just drives me nuts. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you got to let these things play out. That's what happens in college football. Like, oh my God, well, this and this and this. Well, what, it's like, is the season over yet? No. Well, they'll keep playing and then we'll see what happens. And invariably, teams are like, oh, well, you can't put this team in or whatever. They're not that good. And then they play somebody, they get beat, or they show up and it's like, oh, I guess maybe they are pretty good. So, yeah, this is what happens. So you got to let things play. So going nuts about the rankings one week really doesn't matter. All that matters is if they get it right at the very end, and then the teams play each other, and then whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, and you can't talk to me all day about people being disrespected, right? Oh, they're disrespecting Indiana. Indiana was fifth. They're not being disrespected at all.
They
The
were fifth,
SEC
and then they
thinks
just got their butts kicked.
right.
So
The SEC thinks they should be not in the playoff at all, and then you got these media people telling me, no, they're being disrespected. They should be second or third. No, you shouldn't. Do wins matter? Yes, of course they matter, but they don't matter enough for Indiana to be second or third in the country. And we talked about, so I want to enumerate this with, the Indiana losing to Ohio State. I have a couple of comments on this game. So I think, Clark, what people are missing is, and we talked about this before the season started, Clark, we were on this at the beginning. There's a difference between playoff worthy and national championship worthy. And I think people are messing these things up. They think because Indiana's probably not really a national championship contender that they're not worthy of being in the 12-team playoff. They think
but
that
there aren't 12 teams that are national championship
exactly,
contenders.
and that's what I'm going to get to. But that I think people have just we've completely lost sight of this. Okay, as evidenced by, let's go over the Indiana Ohio State game. Look, guys, that game was not really competitive. I know people are going to try to tell me that it was. I know it was 7-0 at one point. Okay, I get it. And I know Indiana made some mistakes that turned that game into something else. Indiana had 150 yards of offense for the entire game. Okay. And if you take out the one drive, they had under 100 yards. So, that everybody's going to be like, oh, well, you look at the score. They beat them by 23. Okay. They were clearly the better team. There was no question as to who the better team was. Okay. They easily covered the spread. I know that doesn't matter to everybody, but it's a data point. It's something. And and I see the argument on the Twitter. Danny Cannell's trying to make the argument. Well, it came down to two plays. Like they screwed up the punt and then they allowed the punt return and blah blah blah. Okay, but those weren't fluky plays. That wasn't like the ball got tipped up in the air and got intercepted. Those weren't like anomalies. Like your punter dropped the ball. That's an unforced error on you. You allowed a 70-yard punt return for a touchdown. That's on you. You couldn't score for 55 minutes in that game. That's on you. No, it wasn't like, oh, I thought, and he's like, Indiana proved they belong. Okay. But let's clarify that. They proved they are worthy of being a top 12 team. I don't think there are 12 teams better than Indiana. Okay. But they are not in Ohio State's league. They are not in the national championship class. That's what happened in that game. That game should have been a lot worse. You're going to talk about, oh, we slowed down Ohio State. Ohio State was taking it easy, especially in the fourth quarter of that game. They had that game in hand. That was not an issue. So, yeah, Indiana's not elite. That's okay. This 12-team playoff. And the thing is, Clark, if you go back in history and you look at it, and I did this, I went back through the 10 years of the 14 playoff. There were many, many years, like 5 or 6 years, where we had 3 lost teams that would have been in the playoff. There was one year where we had like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's totally okay. And we don't have to have this stupid argument about, well, is Indiana, we don't have to go Indiana 11-1 versus Tennessee 10-2, which whatever. This weekend basically turned the argument about who gets the last spot into just not, it doesn't even matter. It's irrelevant to the discussion. Some team's going to get it. It's like, all right, whatever. You can argue for somebody else if you want. It doesn't really matter. They deserve to be in about as much as somebody else. So, yeah, I'm amazed, Clark, that we just can't. College football is so elitist. It's been so elitist for so long that now we can't. And the same argument's like, well, Penn State, who the hell have they beaten? Okay, Penn State's beaten 5 teams that are bowl eligible. Okay, they beat Minnesota. Minnesota 6-4. Is Minnesota a great team? No, but they went on the road. They won the game. A lot of these other teams went on the road, couldn't, not only lost, but were bad. A lot of them. So, no, and they have the 35th or 38th strength of schedule. So just because they haven't beaten a whole lot of top 25 teams, and this is where we get lost, Clark, ranked wins. What's a ranked win? Like, Notre Dame beat Army last night, and that's considered a ranked win. Like, does that really impress you? So yeah, I think that beating teams in the top 40 or 50 or 60 is valuable just because they're not ranked in the top 25, right now. So,
Right.
yeah. So what do you, so, the difference between being playoff worthy and championship worthy, Clark, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, but again, I think we predicted that this is what was going to happen. Everybody just, we're so used to it only being the teams that we actually think can win the national championship, and now we got 12 teams, and there's several of those teams that just are not going to be able to win the national championship. Like it just is what it is. Um, so yeah, I just think people are used to arguing in college football, so they like to argue about this stuff. When in reality, it's like, look, guys, any of the teams that are really really good this year, they're going to be in,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have that like those second tier teams. You're going to have probably most of them are going to get in too. So really, I know people don't really like this. There's really no controversy left. There really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened with Florida State? That's never going to happen again.
Right.
That's totally eliminated. So all the team now, if you want to quibble about, seeding, like, okay, go ahead, but do you care about seeding? I, you know, I mean, if you're in the NBA playoffs, like, do you want to be an 8 seed or a 7 seed? No, and you're probably not going to win the championship. Even if you're a 6 seed, you're not going to win the championship. You better be like a 1 through 4 seed, okay? But in the NFL, like, it doesn't really matter that much. In college, you know, yeah, the higher seeds, like, those are probably the best teams. So I guess that matters to an extent. But, those first round games, are we really going to care about the seeding? Is the seeding really going to make the difference? Like, granted, some of these, you'll be playing on the road, some of these teams. So that obviously makes a difference, I guess. But, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and listen, yeah, obviously teams playing on the road really struggled this week, but yeah, I agree with you. I think these arguments are going to be they're they're going to pale in comparison to what we're trying to do here, and which college football they accomplished it. Like this 12-team playoff, I wrote down in my notes. You can't screw this up, Clark. College football is the worst run sport that we have by far. It's not even close. Okay. And this is still going to be awesome. Like you can complain about Indiana getting in, really? Like well, who's your team that you're like, oh, they don't deserve it, really? Compared to some of these, have you watched some of these other teams? Like, like you can't find 12 teams. Like this is that's the hard part. It's like the good part is about this, or the difficult part is choosing the 12 teams. The good thing is it doesn't really matter who the 12th team is. Like, all right, you can take 3 or 4 of them. So what? Doesn't matter. They're all about the
Then
same.
they're going to end up moving to 16 teams.
Yeah.
And I just think people are so conditioned to argue about it. They're going to be like, well, we can't have 16 teams now because then, and it's like, you guys were some of the same people saying that the BCS was ridiculous and you didn't like the 4-team playoff because, you didn't have enough teams. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. It could either be exclusionary or you can have a lot more people in. It is what it is.
Yeah, and all the people complaining about the 12, this 12-team playoff is a bad idea or whatever, you're all wrong. You're so wrong. It's unbelievable how wrong you are. Like, this is fantastic. It's made the regular season better. Like, you and I were like, oh man, I don't know, last weekend of the regular season, is this going to hurt? Whatever. It's like, hasn't hurt it at all. It has by far enhanced it. I'm staying up to watch Auburn against Texas A&M last night that goes into the 4th overtime because it was ridiculous. College football is awesome. Even though they try to screw it up all the time, I don't think you can. And so, yeah, I'm more jacked up than I ever could be about the playoff. And I think Indiana's going to be in. I don't see any way to keep them out the way things have gone now. And now the way this is, this is kind of changed with the teams losing and all that stuff. And that's what we forget about college. Everybody does this every year with college football. They forget teams are going to lose and you're going to move up and it's pretty much going to work itself out. And it does. It totally does. And so but some crazy takes this week, like Ryan Russillo was I'm sorry, I'm not okay with Indiana getting an 11-1. I'm like, really? Really? Oh, I'm sorry. You got all these teams that are so awesome that we have to put in there. It's like I don't have
Well, I mean,
I don't have a problem
how
with it.
many Big Ten teams are we going to put in there? You're going to put Oregon. You're going to put Ohio State.
Penn State and probably
Penn,
Indiana, so it's 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the problem? And then you're going to put from the SEC. You're going to put Texas,
Georgia, Tennessee, and then we'll see if we get a 4th one, depending on what happens with Texas
right.
A&M or one of those other 3-loss teams can move up.
Okay, and then you get the conference, the Big 12, and then the
ACC, yeah,
the ACC, and then you're going to get
Notre Dame,
and then what? 1 or 2 more teams.
Yeah, I mean it looks right now like the Big 12 I don't think can get more than one team in just because there's a 4-way tie right now for first place. So I think whoever wins, I think it's just going to that'll be one from them. And then the ACC has a chance now because Miami and SMU are probably going to play in the conference championship game. They both have 1 loss. Clemson's sitting there with 2 losses, but they play South Carolina next week. So there could be a conversation about 4th SEC team, 2nd Big 12 or 2nd ACC team. That's kind of what I see that coming down to right now. But who knows? I don't know what's going to happen next week. If it's anything like this weekend, I don't have a clue what's going to happen. Right now I don't think Alabama and Ole Miss are going to get in.
Right.
It's not looking good for them, but could things change? Absolutely they could change. But yeah, I have zero issue with that. And then I heard this other complaint today. Oh man, we can't put a group of 5 team in. This is ridiculous. They don't deserve to be in, blah blah blah. It's like, have you watched the Big 12? Like you watched that Arizona State BYU game. You're telling me Boise State can't compete with them? Like, that's ridiculous. So yeah, I have no problem being inclusive with this. And I'm sorry, we're protecting this college football playoff like it's our baby and we can't let anything happen to it. Like, bullshit. Like, this is perfectly fine. I have zero issue with it. The other one was Joey Galloway on ESPN last week was like, I think Indiana, like they still have a pretty good percentage chance to make the playoff even if they lose to Ohio State. I think they should rest their quarterback this game. Just take this game off, because you don't want your quarterback to get hurt because then you won't make the playoff. And it's like, first of all, it's not apples to apples what you're comparing here. That's completely different. 14 playoff, totally different than 12 teams. Okay. Like in a 12-team playoff, last year's Florida State team gets in. I don't care who they're playing at quarterback. So just the ridiculousness that happens here. Like I hate to break it to everybody. No one wants to talk about this. No one's going to say it. The committee's doing just fine. Their rankings are working out exactly like I said they would. They put those 2-loss teams behind Indiana in a cluster, and what happened? Right? They were right. They had Indiana behind Penn State and Texas. They were right. Look what happened when they played Ohio State. That's why they weren't in the top 4. So, no, they're doing a really good job with the rankings. You can complain, well, this team would beat this team on a neutral field, and I think they're better. You can't do that. You got to go by the results, and that doesn't mean like we're just gonna be arbitrary about it. Well, they won, so that means they're better. It's like, no, we're gonna use some logic and discernment. Strength of schedule matters, but it is not everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think, I think that's what I wanted to say about that. I also wanted to point out that I was right that the SEC needs to calm down. I'm tired of the self-aggrandizing. Well, we're better than. Nah, you know what? You're not. You're not right now. Doesn't mean I still think you're the best conference. Oh, and that's the other thing. The last thing I wanted to say was, you know what? We don't care about your conference. I don't care what conference you're in. This is not about, oh, this conference is better, this conference is better. Every team is an individual basis, especially now because the schedules are all over the place. Like,
right.
Oh, well, they wouldn't win in the SEC. Well, what schedule do they get? If Indiana got Missouri's schedule, they do pretty well. Right? If they got Georgia's schedule, maybe not. But you can't do that. You can't go, oh well, they'd have no chance in this conference. It's just that's a bunch of crap. So yeah, this is gonna be fantastic. We got the rivalry weekend, which I was worried. Oh man, I don't know if this is gonna be any good. So many more games matter than used to. This is gonna be fantastic, and then championship Saturday after that. So anyway, yeah, you can't screw this up. I really don't care what people try to use as their argument that why the committee's terrible. I'm sorry, the committee's not terrible. The committee's doing just fine. Anyway, all right. Anything else on college football, Clark, before we get out of here?
No.
Yeah. It was fantastic. It was amazing. And it'll be nice to see Notre Dame actually play somebody this week instead of watching them win by 40. Like I'm kind of tired of it. They have to go out to USC. I think Notre Dame's a better team, but there's a chance that they'll probably be in a competitive game, which they haven't been in. Notre Dame hasn't really been in a competitive game since the game I went to at the end of September. So that'll be entertaining. But anyway, all right. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and make sure you comment, like, subscribe, tell us where we're right, wrong. I'm trying to do a better job with getting the clips out there, which are a little bit shorter to get our stuff out there. But all right, everybody, have a nice weekend.